Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota says members of her party should embrace Marjorie Taylor Greene, as well as other former MAGA figures who are now breaking with President Trump and his policies. Here's what she said in a recent podcast interview.
The thing that has been very fascinating, especially about Marjorie and Candace, is that they are not just coming out like the other ones that you'd mentioned, where they're saying this action is wrong, right? They're saying, I am done with you. I think that we should give them credit for that, the fact that they've had this wake-up call to finally seeing this con man, this corrupt, chaotic man for what he is, the fact that they understand that he never really had any principles outside of uplifting his ego, the fact that they have gotten off the sycophant train and are saying, you know, we trusted the wrong person. We are sorry for that, and we need all of you to wake up to the fact that you've also trusted the wrong person, I think is an important thing for us to put our arms around and say, yes, then now let's figure out how do we save our country from the disaster that this man is creating.
All right. Well, you know, that's fascinating on about 1,000 different levels. Let's bring in MS Now senior Capitol Hill reporter and the host of Way Too Early, Ali Vitale, and opinion writer at the New York Times, Mara Gay. All right, so this is something I've noticed. There are times when Democrats, when somebody wants to get on their side, but wait, why were you wrong for so long?
Right.
Why we and then they'll sit there and you'll go through a cross-examination. You're like, do you want help or not? I have always found Republicans to be kind of like Southern Baptists in that I grew up in the First Baptist Church in Pensacola, and Dr. Plights, he would play, if it took 16 verses of Just As I Am to get somebody to come down front and give their life to Jesus Christ, he would do it. He would keep playing, then everybody would hug him, and then we'd all be happy. Sometimes we'd go out and try to find somebody off the streets. Will you please just go down so Dr. Plights will let us go to Morrison's, because all the other churches are getting in line before us. But we welcomed whoever came down front and wanted to become a member of the church. Democrats in the past have not done that. I find, though, and you tell me, I find now Democrats are far more accepting of the fallen, the weak, the former Republicans, as they would think. And I think, again, forget who's saying this about, who they're saying this about. Just in general, talk about how that seems to be changing in liberal and progressive circles. You for the Constitution? Okay, good. Come on over. We'll take you.
You know, it's funny because as a native New Yorker, I grew up in a fairly liberal environment, pretty liberal environment, and there was a sense of, I would say, envy among many politically minded New Yorkers and liberals about what Republicans were able to do. You know, just a certain ruthlessness in terms of how they built their coalitions. And there was a long-standing desire, I think, among average, ordinary, everyday Democratic voters to see their own party embrace tactics that would lead to winning elections and big coalitions. And I think that Democrats, having been really put through the ringer the past decade, are really willing to do almost anything to flip this script and change the political situation in the country. The landscape is so demoralizing for liberals, for Democrats, that they recognize something has to change. That also is at the heart of some of the anger toward the party's leadership. That's also why you see lots of competitive races in places that you didn't. And, you know, it started with AOC. It didn't finish there. That's why you see people like Zohran Mamdani starting to reshape the party. And the progressives have been the most active, but it doesn't necessarily have to be just a progressive project. It's clear that there is a deep hunger among ordinary rank and file voters in the Democratic Party to build a coalition that can defeat Trump and Trumpism.
So, Ali Vitale, that's the big picture and efforts Democrats to expand the tent. But let's talk about the particulars here, because there's quite the backstory between Congresswoman Omar and former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. So talk to us, remind us why these words that we just heard are frankly so unlikely.
Well, it's because it does feel like an up is down moment when you hear Congresswoman Omar saying we should embrace former Congresswoman Greene. They have had a very tense relationship, and I think that's putting it mildly. There have been censure requests. There have been racist comments toward Omar from Greene. There have been allegations of not being loyal to the United States on her part. All of that eventually led to Omar trying to push to strip Greene of her committee assignments several years ago. And yet, I think that what Congresswoman Omar is doing here is indicative of something that Democrats are trying to grapple with, as Joe and Mara are talking about. This idea of what does it mean to have a big tent? It's easy to talk about, but is it something that they can actually put into practice? And then also the idea that Democrats are trying to toy with now on everything from MAGA Republicans who are upset over tariffs, over Iran, over the way that this Trump presidency has unfolded in its second term. The idea of piercing the veil. And once you do that, can you invite these people in, if not to the party for a long time, for a moment, enough to turn the tide? I think that's something that the entire party is grappling with right now, Mika.